ask yourself that question, what kind of business do I want to have in 5 years? You will start doing the things that it takes to get that done, and you'll have a far better business in 5 years than 5 years from now you have the exact same business you have now.
Welcome back, you beautiful people, to the Craftsman's Collective, a podcast designed to help the makers in the concrete, wood, and steel industries improve their businesses and lives by discussing tips and tricks that we found along the way, discussing our common struggles, and combining our unique perspectives to create even more spectacular pieces. My guest today is Cody Sandoval, a fellow maker in the designer concrete industry, the owner-operator of WhiteStone Concrete, and the owner of the concrete sealer Seal Hair. We primarily talk about business in this episode, different things from mindsets that you should have, habits that you should set up. We go over a couple resources, primarily books, and then some decision-making processes that you should go through even before you start, how you should set your business up, different goals that you may have. Later on in the episode, we also talk about this concrete sealer Seal Hair. We also talk about some organizational tips for shops and various things that you can do to increase your efficiency, but primarily it's about business. As usual, if you're looking for anything specific, check the timestamps in the show notes. Anything that we mention as far as resources are concerned will also be linked in the description. And without further ado, on to the episode.
Check it out.
I'm trying to think back, but I'm pretty sure I've never heard any of your story as far as like how did you even come to concrete? Like, why was that even an option for you?
Right. So let's see. When I grew up, my grandpa was a concrete mason, and he moved down to Mexico when I think probably when I was about 6 years old. No, maybe it was a little, maybe I was eight. But he moved down to Mexico. He taught my dad masonry, so my dad was a mason. And every summer I'd go down to visit my grandparents down in Mexico. And he was always making stuff out of concrete. That's the only building material there is in Mexico. You got concrete, and that's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
all the houses. So he built countertops, benches, fences, paver stones. He did bird baths, and he did all kinds of stuff on this beach house that they had. So every summer I'd go down and we'd always do a project together. He did a great big fireplace with a bench around it, and it was pretty amazing, this house that he built. But I always had kind of an idea that you can make things out of concrete. Just working with my grandpa for all those summers growing up, and that was basically up until I was about 28. I did that, and I did work with my dad in the summer times, going through school. And when you're young, you always want to, get away from what your family business is doing. And I didn't really like concrete when I was young. It's dirty and it's hot, and
Mm-hmm.
I was always, building scaffolding and unloading bags of concrete and stuff like that. I always had the grunt work, and I hated it. So I wanted a way out of that. I didn't want to follow a third generation into masonry. So I went to school, college, ended up finding aviation, which is something I always wanted to do, and got into aviation, became a commercial airline pilot, and started flying for probably about 7 or 8 years until the economy was just really bad at the time when I started flying for the airlines. I was lucky to get a job when I did. And even though it was a good job, there wasn't a lot of movement, there wasn't a lot of progression. So I had a lot of free time, and I didn't have a lot of extra spending money. We had kids and a new house and stuff like that. So I wanted something that I could do as a side project, just to make some money, just fun money to, spend on going fishing or go on a vacation. We had enough just to pay the bills, but we didn't quite have money for, just fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I met a guy who was teaching a class, and went to one of his classes. It was a 3-day class, and kind of started making small stuff. I was going to do it out of my garage, but then I soon found out that's kind of difficult. I couldn't get a business license for it, so it didn't take too long that I found a shop and got a lease on it. And then once you have a shop, you have to put stuff in it. So,
Mm-hmm.
you start buying tables and table saws and just equipment. And then, you're quite invested into it at that point. But yeah, we started getting business, pretty much within the first couple months. And my intention wasn't initially to actually do concrete. I wanted to sell concrete products. That was my initial thought. But that didn't work out. So to keep the bills paid, we had to start doing, concrete. And we started making fire pits, and that worked. And then I went down and did some classes with Jeremy French and Buddy Rhodes. Did a few classes with them, and we did Epic several times, and just making the rounds for Plan B and stuff like that. But yeah, that's pretty much how we got started.
Was when you started doing it because you somewhat, because you were invested in it, I guess is a good way to put it. Did you start to enjoy it, or was that something that just, like, slowly started, or maybe you still don't really enjoy enjoy it? I guess that's a
Yeah, I always like making stuff. I was always doing projects. Even, before I was doing concrete, I was always just making furniture pieces for my house,
Mhm,
making presents for my parents, make a table for my mom for Christmas. I was always doing projects, even if it was, redoing a guitar or something like that.
mhm,
Anytime I was home, I always liked to shop. And when I was in school, elementary school and junior high, high school, the schools I went to, they had really, really good shop programs.
mm,
So I was always hanging out in the shop. I was always in the shop class, in the pottery studio, the art studio, the photography studio. We had a lot of that kind of stuff at school I went to, and it was just fun. I always liked working with my hands. When I was in college, I was a TA at the art center in Salt Lake
mm,
for the pottery studio. So, always taking some sort of a clay material and putting it into a form and letting it cure, and then having a functional piece that's an artisan piece that you made with your hands. I just was always interested in that. And when I started doing the concrete, I was super interested in it. It looked fun. I had a rental property that I wanted to do some countertops for. So I remember looking online and trying to find, some do it yourself type things. That's how a lot of people get started.
oh, yeah,
They do something for their house, and then it kind of leads from there. But I've always enjoyed it. I've always done it for the joy of just doing the artisan work. And I never planned on having like a full on business doing it. It was something I was just doing for fun. And because I was doing it for fun, I wasn't really relying on the money that I was making to live on. So I was using the money to reinvest back into the business because I was
mhm,
an airline pilot. I was flying full time,
yep,
and that was kind of paying the bills. And that's kind of what gave me a good mindset on how to run a business, because I was running a business in a way where the money I made wasn't critical to paying bills. And so I allowed myself to make a lot of mistakes,
mhm,
and they weren't something that was going to sink my business. I could try something, I could try different product, I can just take the time to kind of run my business without a lot of fear. And a lot of times fear is what keeps people back from running a business. They're afraid they're going to fail, so they'll never start a business. They always want to.
mhm,
But if you can run a business in a way where you don't have fear, fear of failing or fear of not succeeding, and you can do things that are more risky, then it allows you to kind of grow a business organically. And I think just having a passion for the artisan trade, and then also not really caring about the money and being able to invest a lot of money back into the business, I was able to get a really nice shop, employees, a lot of really nice tools. And so that mindset is what just kind of pushed my business forward into something that just became basically a full time career.
mhm. There's a whole lot of stuff there. Okay, so,
Yeah.
let's start with the oh, man, there's just so many good things there. Let's start with that. Okay, so there's almost always this dichotomy of of how people approach things, and one of the main there might be a third way, but the two main things or routes that people usually take when it comes to starting a business or a passion or a hobby or something like that is it's the one you just burn all your bridges and you go all in, the whole scorched earth policy, I guess, and you go full in on that thing. The other route is, I don't want to say the cautionary route because it makes it sound a little bit too squishy, right? But it's like, get a job, lower your means so that you're not just spending every dollar that comes in, every dollar goes out. Um, Give yourself that cushion, and then start this thing on the side. Which it sounds like that's more of the route that you're advocating for.
I think that's the route that most people need to do
Mhm.
when they're starting a business. Because if you just have no source of income and then you start a business, it's going to require a lot of capital.
Mhm.
And then regaining the capital becomes this thing that you're chasing because, say you invest 40,000 or 50,000 or $100,000 in a business, you're already in the hole right away.
Mhm.
You're in debt. And then you've got to dig yourself out. So it takes years to start realizing a profit if you've come in it with capital like that. Whereas a business like concrete, there's a lot of businesses people can start. They can start washing windows, carpet cleaning businesses, epoxy floors. There's a lot of things you can do on nights and weekends where once you get your foot in the door with some sort of a skill set secondary to your job, you can start to make money with that skill set,
Mhm.
and then you can set that money aside and use it to grow your business. So if you want to start an epoxy floor business, you can rent equipment for the job, and you can pay for it with the job and not have any overhead and make a small profit and then keep turning that. And I think organic growth, for me, it seems to be the best way to actually grow a really healthy business versus just quitting your job and going all in on something, because you get one mistake. Mistakes in this industry, especially with concrete artisan, they can be really expensive. I mean, you can have
Mhm.
a $5,000 bill sitting in a dumpster, and you're remaking a kitchen or a countertop, and you're weeks out, and you're not getting paid for another 2 weeks because you're recasting or whatever it is. You have to allow yourself to make mistakes, and you can't put yourself in a position where those mistakes become catastrophic.
Mhm. So so when so okay, so let's say that somebody is going that route. They've got a main source of income, and they're either their means are low enough to where they can put a lot aside, or maybe they only put a little bit aside, and they can save up for very specific things when they get started. What would be the top, like, 2 or 3 things where you would recommend, like, you should really save up for, maybe not the best of this thing, but pretty close to it? What are those, like, 2 or 3 things when somebody's getting started out? Like, you gotta get a really good version of this.
I would say, first of all, you have to be able to sell a product,
Mhm.
but you have to have a product to sell. So if it's epoxy floors or concrete countertops or artisan furniture or welding or whatever it is, you have to have people be able to find you. So the most important thing right out of the gate is some sort of a website and some sort of advertising. It could be through a classified ad that has, local businesses. Google My Business is a really, really good source
Mhm.
because you could simply have an address, tie your business account to it, and then you show up on a Google search when somebody types in keywords. And having a website and an address and a phone number, that's the most important thing starting out right away. Because if people can't find you, it's just going to be word of mouth, and you'll get a few jobs, but you're never going to start a business. It's going to take a long time to develop a business unless you have a really niche market and you have kind of an in with somebody who needs that kind of work and that can send work your way. The most important thing right out of the gate is going to be a good website, and it could be really simple. It could just be a square website with some pictures on it and your contact info.
Mhm.
Also, spending a little bit of money on SEO. Those things are all pretty cheap. You can get those done for a couple $1,000s, and a couple $1,000 investment on a business up front isn't what I would call debt. You want to stay out of that, $10,000 and up range when you start a business, but a little bit in the beginning is going to be really important.
Okay.
Tools and stuff like that are
Mhm.
less important. You can get by with cheaper tools until you can afford. nicer tools.
Okay. Um, so with the um, we so like kind of clarify what you mean by organic growth. So is it because you?
Organic growth
Mhm,
basically means that your company is developing at the pace that your sales and your profits coming in to the company. So, like for example, if you never did a concrete countertop or never did any type of artisan furniture or whatever type of business it is you want to sell, even if it's a window washing business, if you want to do a window washing business, you could spend $150 on buckets and squeegees and microfiber rags and go knock on doors, right?
mhm,
And then you can get money, and eventually you can buy a van, and eventually you can buy a trailer. But if you just wanted to start a business right up front and you went and bought a truck and a trailer and you hired 5 employees, now you got payroll, you got accounting, you've got insurance, you got all kinds of upfront costs. And now you're just chasing backwards trying to get enough money to pay for that when you don't even have a single customer.
mhm.
So organic growth means you're just starting at the means that you can afford. So if you have some disposable income, say you got $3 or $4,000 saved up, that you just have to say, okay, if I lose this, it's fine. You can put that in, get the best tools, the best website you can buy for that amount, and then let the company grow at the pace in which your jobs and your profits coming in.
Okay, so when you say organic growth, it's more uh associating with the business itself as like like an entity as opposed to
Yes,
see because I've always heard it where it's associated with like word of mouth, right? That is like how I've always heard it in association with. So it's that's good to see the because that was just an
I'm talking
assumption,
about in financial
right?
terms, business management
Hmm.
terms, because
So that makes more
say you were to
sense.
quit your job, yeah, say you were to quit your job, spend $10,000 on a bunch of equipment, and you have no means of customers, you have no
Hmm.
advertising or anything, and day one, like 2 weeks later, you need some sort of a paycheck to make a house payment,
Hmm.
food, gas bills, pay for your kids, clothes, and all that kind of stuff. So um, that's what I mean. You don't want to get if you've never started a business and you've never been in business for yourself. It's really good to get some sort of stable job and then do a side business. There's a lot of business books that recommend going that route.
Are there any particular business books that you would recommend, like somebody's starting out, they'd be like these, like one or two, you should probably read these?
The most important book that I have ever read is called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Richard
Hmm.
Kiyosaki.
It's a good book.
I don't know if you've read that book,
Hmm.
but that's an excellent book because it talks about mindset and fear. And I think fear is the most understood concept when it comes to business or investing in property or anything you do. So, for example, from that book, if you're afraid to lose money, most likely you'll go through your life and you'll never lose money. But if you don't lose money, you're never going to make money. You're never going to be successful. You'll just have a job, which is fine,
Hmm.
and you'll do just a regular job working for somebody else. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to be an investor in property, you have to lose that mindset when it comes to fear, because you just have to understand you are going to fail hundreds of times
Yep.
and you're going to lose money a lot. And so I've lost lots and lots of money running my business. There's been times where I've lost $15,000. There's been times I've lost 10,000, 3,000. But because I never had to depend on that money to survive, I was able to easily recover from it and keep going forward. But I learned from every single one of those mistakes. And basically, I just figure like it's a tuition in running my own business. You can't learn this stuff from a college, you can't learn it from a school.
Hmm.
They're not going to teach you how to be an entrepreneur, because entrepreneurship and running a business is something that is, some people have it and some people don't. Some people can learn it, but either way you get there, either it's something you just have in you or it's something you learn along the way. You have to you have to understand that things are going to go wrong and that you're going to make mistakes. So if you lose that fear element in running a business, you'll be able to kind of run it in a way that you don't have anything to lose, right?
Well, the other thing that's should probably bring up in association with that, like if you have to make a buck, you're the primary breadwinner or something along those lines, and you're you're making decisions from a scarcity standpoint, and you're probably going to make either bad decisions or at the very least poor decisions, right? So like if you want to carry, like say for concrete guys, let's say that you wanted to do furniture and you want to do some of these higher end things, but well, you need to make a buck. You may end up just doing, well, countertops are the easy thing, right? Not to downplay that, but that's the market for that, and how to market that is much easier than completely custom pieces, right? So it's probably worth mentioning that when you have that kind of main source of income, you can afford to really push forward on the things that you really want to make. I don't know if you agree with that, or maybe that's a little bit too much of a stretch.
I think your business will allow you to do stuff like that once you get it established. So if you have something that becomes like your bread and butter,
Hmm.
sinks and countertops, then you can take jobs that are more risky because there are jobs that are more risk averse. The countertop is pretty straightforward,
Hmm.
especially if it's on a smaller, smaller job, 50 square foot kitchen. Pretty straightforward, pretty safe. Even if you have to recast a piece or whatever, it's pretty safe versus a 27-foot fireplace around that has, intricate design elements to it, multiple pieces that all have to fit together,
Hmm.
fluted chevrons that run vertically through the whole thing. That's a really risky piece. But if you have a bread and butter type of thing that you start your business with that you kind of cut your teeth on and you get comfortable with your mix designs and you get comfortable with your products and your sealers and you get comfortable with your habits, then you can take more risky jobs. And then sometimes you'll learn that you'll look at some jobs that you look at and you'll decide it's just not even worth it to
Yeah.
do them, right? So you'll learn that as running a business. There's certain things that you could look at that are pretty safe, and there's certain ones you look at and you're like, there's just no way I'm going to touch this.
Hmm. So is it, going back to the getting started part, is it safe to, let's see if you agree with this, where the really nice tools are more of a, it makes the process more enjoyable and easier, but you can still get by with some very bare minimum tools? Like, is that kind of the,
Yeah,
in a
of course.
nutshell?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to Harbor Freight and get cheap tools to start, and then you can look forward to buying a saw stuff one day. You can look
Mhm,
forward to buying festool equipment one day, and it's kind of a way to reward yourself for hard work, because it feels good to be able to buy professional equipment. If you were
mhm,
to go out and buy, $10,000 worth of festool equipment, I mean, it just depends on what you're going to do. If you're going to
right,
be a mill worker or something like that, or a finish carpenter, it might be worth it up front.
mhm,
If you're going to do concrete artisan, you can get by with cheaper tools. If you're going to wash windows, you can get by with cheaper tools. Now you can find window washing companies that have $100,000 pieces of equipment, right, to do multi-story buildings and all kinds of stuff. But they didn't get there right away. They built that from the ground up.
mhm. Well, that was the one thing that I've rarely seen people mention, and it doesn't even seem to matter what industry it's in. Like, you got these photography guys, you've got the concrete guys, woodworkers. They all say that the tool doesn't make the professional or whatever, the professional makes the end piece. But they always leave out the last part that as soon as I heard it, it just clicked. It's just like those things make the process so much easier and more enjoyable. And like
Of
that,
course.
for me, that was the missing piece, because I was like, there's something missing there, because I've slowly been uh upgrading all of my tools and like measuring utensils, whatever you'd like to call them. And I'm like, no, this is so much better. like like there's
Of
not even a
course.
comparison between the two. But that last.
But it's like playing guitar. You can start learning how to play guitar on a $300 guitar,
Mhm.
And once you develop and you become, a lot more capable of whatever skill you're learning, then you can go out and buy a $3,000 guitar,
Mhm.
right? But is it worth it to go buy that in the beginning? I think more important than tools in the beginning are just making sure that you have good habits
Mhm.
and that you have good materials, and that it doesn't matter what materials you're using so long as you're comfortable with them and that they're consistent so that you know what to expect on a day-to-day process. Habits and your shop setup and your organization and the way you run your business from the beginning is way more important than the tools and how things, appear or look. But yeah, eventually when you get there, it's super nice to have nice equipment.
Mhm. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and and move into that. So habits and mindsets are they can they can make or break whatever it is that you're trying to do, right? I've heard the quote of there's never been a killer that's roamed uh the world that is will kill more dreams than fear. And I've never heard it explained that way before. And like it really is just like, and it takes so many insidious forms, right? It could be that relative that says, be careful. It's
Right.
that it's that small undertone that's there. And then sometimes it's just that outright of, you can't do that. Um,
That's exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about fear and mindset, is that there are people that are afraid of taking chances and they're afraid of losing money. And they'll project those fears on you,
mhm,
and they think that they're telling you the right information. They think they're coming from a place of wisdom. And they'll say you need to be careful with this. You have to lose all that fear. You just have to go for whatever goal you have. If you want to be an entrepreneur and run your own business and be your own boss, you have to put all that aside and just go for it. And if you go for it in a way where you're not putting yourself in a position to lose a lot of financial status, within your family, how you're providing for your family or yourself, then you can take those chances. That's why we talked about um, growing your business
mhm.
on the side. Once you're established with some sort of a stable job, and then you can work yourself out of that, and eventually you won't have to do that job anymore.
So, what are some of the habits that you would highly recommend somebody start to either, if they already have them, they should double down on them, or if they don't have them or there's not as strong, that they should really start working on those?
Right. I think habits in business is one of the most overlooked things that most people suffer from, because I do a lot of phone calls with people in this industry and talk to a lot of guys that are having all kinds of, issues they have to overcome. And I would say probably there's a lot that I want to talk about when it comes to habits, but I would say one of the most important habits that people have got to kind of be aware of is doing a project and coming up with a problem and not giving themselves the time to deal with the problem. So, for example, they'll find a problem with their sealer or their mix or their casting, and they have to get it fixed by 10 o'clock tomorrow.
Hmm.
And they'll go to a forum or they'll make a phone call, and people were telling them all the right information. You got to do this. You got to just recast it. If it's got cracks in it or something, you just can't. You can't correct stuff like this. Just go ahead and recast it. And they haven't given themselves. They haven't built the lead time in, or they're getting pushed by their customer,
Hmm.
and they can't do the right corrective action. And then what happens is they don't develop good habits in, learning how to deal with a problem correctly and taking the time to deal with it. If it's going to take, they have to polish something again and regrout it and reseal it, or if they have to recast it or something. If you don't build yourself the time, you're never going to learn the right habits.
So, what if you? So, let's say that you got a. Well, actually, let's take it kind of midway through. Let's say that the person already has proficient skills, but nothing in the queue, right? So there's no projects that they have to work around. What is like a minimum time frame that you would recommend them tell their client? Like, it takes me X amount of times to make a standard piece.
Man, that is so subjective. It could be all over the place depending on what kind of company you're dealing with. Some companies have 15 projects on the books and their lead times might be 3 months. And I've been there. Or you might have a company that's just one single person. He does one job at a time, and the lead time might be 2 to 3 weeks, right? But usually people get in trouble when they take a job and it's got to be done in 6 days. And it's a big job, and then they're up at
Mm,
night and they're trying to push
mm.
products and they're trying to push stuff through. I see more problems with guys taking those kind of jobs on and those kind of risks. So your lead time would be however long it takes you to build the project plus the other jobs you have in your queue.
Okay.
So to your question, if you have nothing in the queue,
Mhm.
then that just depends on how your shop runs. You might be able to push a project start to finish in 7 days. Some people might take 2 to 3 weeks. It just depends on the individual.
How do you recommend on somebody, uh, aggregating that information? Because like
It's through experience. It really is just through experience. If you have 6 months experience, it's going to be hard to aggregate that, and you're going to have to get that information through other people that have been in the business longer, just like we're talking about now.
so you would
But the
recommend
longer
hitting up
you
the forums if you're, say, 6 months
you
to a
got to be
year.
careful with the forums. You got to be careful with
Yeah.
the forums. They're good. They can be good, but you get information all over the
Mhm.
place, and a lot of it starts to contradict. Um, a lot of the information starts to contradict itself, and so people get confused. And so I recommend finding mentors in the industry. That's the best way. Find somebody that you have a good relationship with. Find somebody that's going to answer the phone when you call. There's a lot of people that I've, reached out to over the years that have helped me out. So just having a couple good connections within the industry with somebody established that can answer the phone call every once in a while when you have a project. Find somebody that you trust their find somebody that you like the way they run their business, you like the work they put out, get a relationship with them somehow.
Mhm.
Training events are great. Meetups and stuff like that are really good to go and network with people. A lot of times when you go to a class, it's mostly about networking. It's not
Yep.
so much about what you're learning in the class. And some of those networking, if you get two or three phone calls or two or three phone numbers, and you find somebody you just really respect, that's going to help you more than anything,
Mhm.
way more than the forums. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
call that person and say, hey, I got this problem going on. What do you think?
Mhm.
And then allow yourself to develop good habits to where you're not going, okay, I got a countertop I got to put in tomorrow and it's got a crack in it. What should I do? And if you talk to somebody you look up to or respect or your mentor and they say, dude, you got to recast this. Like I've seen this 100 times before. You just got to recast this. And they're going, it's got to be in tomorrow. I'm like, well, I'm telling you what you need to do. You need to call your
Mhm.
customer and tell them there's a mistake. And then it just depends on what kind of business you want to build for yourself. Do you want to build a business that's based on the highest quality somebody could possibly buy and put in their house and be proud of? Or do you want to have a business where you're just cranking out stuff and you have to pay the bills and you have to pay the payroll and you've got to make shop rent? So it doesn't matter. I'm just going to put this out. And so that's what artisan industries are. That's why they're so that you can't compare one business to another business. It's just like somebody making wedding cakes, right? You could have your neighbor make a wedding cake, or you can find a famous, chef baker that can make an amazing wedding cake, and the price difference is huge. It's the same thing in the end.
Mhm.
But when it comes to an artisan industry like we're in, you can have a furniture maker that makes amazing high quality pieces, and some people that make stuff that's got mistakes in it,
Mhm.
and it's is somebody going to pay money for it? Now, if you're starting out and you want to tell people, hey, I'm just starting out, I've never made one of these before, I'd like to make one, and they go into it understanding that maybe you're not charging them, quite what a true professional would be charging, and they have that understanding. There's ways to get around it, but ultimately, that's kind of where you want to be with it.
So when so as far as that particular habit is concerned, like giving yourself not enough time, what you would want to do is go through and maybe make a piece or a couple pieces that are similar to it and make sure you see like, okay, how long does it take me to make this piece is if everything goes right, this is how long it takes me to make it, and then add on additional time or maybe even just double it if you something goes wrong and you have to remake it. Would you double that time or times 2.5? Like, because there are some people
It
who they
just
don't have.
there's no right answer. The thing is, I would just tell your customers that what you're selling them is handcrafted artisan work. It's not tile that you buy at a store and install. It's not carpet that you're installing. It's handcrafted, and say this is generally what the time is going to be for me to make this.
Mhm,
But I always give myself extra time if I need it. And if I need to call you on the phone and say, hey, I need an extra few days, they just have to go into it understanding that this is handcrafted, material. And as long as the customers understand that when they give you the deposit check, there's no problem.
yeah,
They would rather have it look right. So I would just go into it just being open and honest with your customers, but it also depends on what kind of business you're
mhm,
building. So for example, there's people that work, one or two people in a shop. Either they have an apprentice or a partner, and they do it for the love of the artisanship, or they're trying to make a nice little side business for themselves so that they could be their own boss. But there's other companies that are huge and have 40 employees,
mhm,
and there's a balance between the quality of the work you're putting out and the type of business that you want to do. So there's companies that do millions of dollars a year, and I talk to these people, and the quality is not that high, but they're really, really good at other aspects of the business. So you could focus, you have to ask yourself, how much time do you want to focus on all these parts of your business? If you're singularly focused on making concrete or making furniture and you're completely ignoring your accounting, you're ignoring your bookkeeping, you're ignoring your customer marketing side, then you're going to have a business that all you do every single day is chase this quality part, and you're trying to put this the best work out. But what kind of business is it going to build? Some people can build a great business that way, other people can't. Some people can start with a product that's just completely low quality, but they have excellent marketing and they've spent so much time on marketing, they're masters at marketing.
mhm,
And because they're so good at marketing, they build a company that's doing, millions and millions of years, and they have, 40, 50 employees. Their product isn't that good, but it doesn't matter. It just depends on what you want to sell, what kind of business you want to run.
mhm,
So you could be a best selling concrete artisan, or you could be a best making concrete artisan, or you could be somewhere in between.
right,
But there's so many variables when it comes to what you're doing. But I see a lot of guys that will spend a month on a project trying to make it perfect, and they'll end up giving themselves a $12 an hour job. You know what I mean?
mhm. So, figuring out where you wanna be on that spectrum could almost answer or at least point you in the right direction of any question that you might come up. So, like, how long should it take me to make a piece? What are the quality of the ingredients that I should use? What are the how many areas of my business do I have to do personally, right? Because if you're a one man shop, then you've got to do everything, right? Um,
So I've told people, don't start a business and then let the business run you,
mhm,
because you will ultimately get to where you're running a business, but you have to decide if it's the kind of business that you want to run, if that's the kind of business you want to have. I look at things different. I think you should look at what kind of business you want to have,
mhm,
and then you should work all your methods, all your techniques, all your products, all your timelines. Everything should be based on what kind of business that you want to run. And a lot of part of that that people forget is their family life, right? So I've told every person that I've talked to for many years, I tell people you have to go home at 5 o'clock. If you cannot leave your job at 5 o'clock at night, unless it's the occasional, thing,
mhm,
but on for the most part, you need to be able to leave your business 85% of the time at 5 o'clock. And if you can't run a business and make money by leaving at 5 o'clock, you will get yourself in a position where you're running a business that eventually you'll hate.
mhm. Yeah, some of the things that I've been reading here lately about productivity and efficiency and those types of things. um, have really started to focus around this idea of like how much time and attention can the human body and mind actually dedicate to things, right? And it's been fascinating seeing how, like, what do they call? There's even a term for them who like these people who work like 80 something hours a week or something like that. Shit, I can't remember the name of it. Anyways, just a funny little name for them, and they're already starting to show like once you go past X amount of time a week for certain tasks, like things just go to shit. And that's it's interesting that that's the end viewpoint that you come to is okay, so like 5 o'clock is like the cutoff time. Nothing past that. I like once like you may have to do it every once in a while because like I mean, face it, once water hits cement, like you
Yep.
are you're committed, right? So there are those exceptions, but the rule should be you should keep it below X amount of hours a week. Um,
It shouldn't be a rule because there's a lot of people who want something different from their business. Some people like to work at night. Some people
mhm,
just like to be in their shop. Um, so I wouldn't say it's a rule. I would just say instead of starting a business with the singular mindset of making a product, start a business with the mindset of what you want the business to be. And for me, it's a business that I could leave at 5 o'clock at night. It's a business that I could sell one day, and you can't sell yourself. So if you don't have a product or a line or something that you can sell one day, then you're just working basically self-employed. Just somebody like a plumber or a tile setter or something like that.
mhm,
But every single one of those businesses, there are people that have huge buildings and lots of employees in their businesses that can be sold one day. So there's everything in between. But I would tell people right when they start a business, decide what they want the business to be. Do they want it to be a side business? Do they want it to be their main career? Um, and then ask yourself what kind of lifestyle you want to live.
mhm,
A lot of people don't figure this out even when they go into college. They go into college, they have no idea what they're going to do, and then they just take a random, they just select some random major and have no idea how they're going to pay off the student loans. They don't know what kind of life they're going to live. They go through and they become something, and then they don't realize that profession is going to take them to a city they don't want to live in. It's going to have a lifestyle they don't want to be in. Aviation is a really good example of that. I wanted to be in aviation when I was young, and when you're young you really don't know what you're doing. I was 21
mhm,
when I started flying, and I really just wanted, at all costs, I just wanted to fly airplanes. I didn't care where it took me. I didn't care what kind of family life I had. I didn't care because I didn't have a family at the time. But once I got a decade into flying airplanes and having kids and stuff like that, I realized being in a hotel room 4 nights a week and being home 2 days a week and then going right back on the road and being gone all the time and never unpacking your suitcase and living in a hotel room all the time. It's just not a lifestyle that I want to live. Some people love that. They like to just be gone. They like to be out. They like to travel.
mhm,
I just didn't want to. I have kids. I wanted to be around my kids. I wanted to see them grow up. So luckily for me, I started this concrete business, and that business has been able to support me. After I got it developed, it makes plenty of money, and I don't have to hardly fly airplanes anymore.
mhm. Well, I mean, priorities change over the course of life, so
Yep.
it's good to like. My wife and I were talking about this morning on our walk. Is um, being very committed to the thing that you're working on, but also be cognizant that other things can come your way. And you need to be open to those things to even be able to see them, right? Um, Sometimes you've got people where they just put on blinders and they just ignore everything that's going by them. And you may end up enjoying something else that's either a derivative of what you're doing or something completely different altogether. Um, which is I do wanna kinda close the loop on one thing before I go on to the next thing, but, I just wanted to clarify, like, when when I was mentioning the 5 PM and and below and like leaving at 5 p.m. It was more of a have rules for yourself that you kind of stay within. So
Right.
like I'm a night
That's right.
owl. And I love working in the evenings, but this time of my life,
Yep.
that's just not an option. So it is probably a better way for me to phrase it is find out what rules you want to apply to your life and then stick to those. So
100%.
if you have this is something that my wife and I have been doing here recently that has been working out great for us is every Thursday morning when we drop the kids off at daycare, we come home and we go on a 30 to 45-minute walk every single Thursday without fail. It does not matter what is, unless it's like monsooning outside, obviously. Stay safe out there, folks. But like we have that in our calendar. It happens every single week. And then on Wednesdays, we have a lunch date every single Wednesday. Nothing gets blocked during that time, period. And those are little rules that you can kind of build into your life where it's also much easier mentally wise. Like, you know that that thing's going to happen on this day. Like, it's not an option. There's not an option for me to schedule something during that time. And so I love that you have that rule that works out great for you baked into the system. And
Well, and I learned this the hard way because when I first started my
mhm,
business, I had no idea what I was doing.
mhm,
And the first month, we had a rent of $1,300, which at the time just felt like a house payment. It was so
mhm,
much money. And it didn't take but 6 weeks of going to Home Depot to where you're $8,000 in the hole, buying stuff. And luckily, we had a few jobs that we were spending a lot of money in the beginning, and I had a little bit of disposable income that I was set aside to do this. Um, but I ran out of that money pretty quick, and so I was working late at night and doing that for a year. You come home to your wife and your kids, and there's a toll that's taken, especially when I was flying airplanes and stuff like that. And so I learned it pretty quick that if I couldn't get something done by 5 o'clock, it's just not worth having a business that I'm doing. If it's just going to take me till 10, 8 o'clock at night, 1 in the morning, I just couldn't do it. And so
mhm,
I learned the hard way. And what I found is once I gave myself, some guidelines of my business that I wanted to build a business that I could do everything by 5 o'clock and force myself to leave, you just become way more productive in the day. You become way more efficient.
mhm.
You take less time on the phone. You don't wander around like a fish in a fishbowl. You start organizing your shop where your tools are right where you need them. You start doing everything you can to make your business as efficient as possible so that you can get to 5 o'clock and punch out and leave.
Yeah, I think I wish I remember the name of the principle. I think it's like Pareto's principle or something like that, where the time it takes to complete a task or whatever expands or contracts the amount of time that you have allotted to it. So if you say like I've got 2 hours to finish this thing, it's amazing that that thing almost always gets done in 2 hours, but if you said I'm going to do 4 hours, it magically expands to where it takes 4 hours to then do that thing.
Hmm.
And yes, and I've seen that here even recently. Like if you cut those times down, it's amazing how much quicker and focused you are on whatever that particular task is.
Well, we just moved into a new shop
Mhm,
and I was finally able to build, this is my third shop that I've had. And I was finally able to build it exactly the way I wanted. I really liked the shop we had before, but it was 45-minute drive from my house, and there was no windows in the building, so we had no natural light. Um, and just the commute and the lack of sunlight on there, just you get in
mhm,
this box, and it wasn't a place I wanted to be anymore. Now that I have my own building that I own, I was able to build it out exactly the way I wanted it, and knowing everything I know from running a business, the way I want to run it, a lot of the way that I build all the techniques and methods in my shop are based on what I've learned in aviation and just the efficiency and checklists and everything. So every single place in my shop we have a work cell built into it where we have, a cart that moves around and goes to each station. It has exactly the tools that you'll need for that. So for example, if we're mold building, in the mold building shop, we have a cart has exactly the tools we need on it. They never leave. We have multiple tools in each part of the shop. So I have a mold making section, I have a casting section, I have a sealer section, and I have a installation section. I'll have multiple tools. And after running a business, a profitable business for many years, I was finally able to invest in multiple sets of tools, so I'm not
Mhm.
running to the installation box and getting some drill or impact driver, and then I go to the job site and I forgot this stuff
Mhm.
because I took it out of my I took it out of my install box.
Yep.
I have silicone for the install box. I have silicone for the mold making room. So we built these work cells, and what it does is it isolates you of the area that you're working, so that you're making as few steps as you can a day. We have a 6,000 square foot shop, and if you watch an employee walk around a 6,000 square foot shop in a day, just the amount of time
Mhm.
wasted looking for tools and looking for equipment and getting stuff. If you just make really good systems and you put really good systems in place, you could alleviate so much time that you can start getting projects done in much, much less time.
Let's say somebody has a small to medium sized shop. What are some examples of some of those systems that maybe not like specifics down to the letter, but maybe some frameworks that somebody should to look at to develop a
The
system or
most,
two?
the most important thing that I would recommend to anybody in a small shop is do not keep anything that you don't need. Don't keep extra material. Don't keep extra wood.
Mhm.
Don't keep extra tools. Have the most minimal amount of equipment and products in your shop, and keep your shop as clean as possible,
Mhm.
because your mind will just start to become slower and more cluttered if you have
Mhm.
wood, but it's stacked between, I have to unstack 5 pieces of wood to get to this piece.
Mhm.
And do I want to do this? And okay, now I got to stop and go look for this tool. And I see people who have really clean shops. I myself have a meticulously clean shop, and I enjoy working it. That's how I work. But I do tech support for people, and I talk to them and do video chat with them. And it looks like just complete chaos. There's stuff all over the floor. There's water, cement, cords.
Mhm.
There's 1,000 different, mixing buckets, and they got cement all rolled up and packed. So if I was going to go in as somebody who's going to optimize a business, say somebody hires you and they want you to come in and say, I need to become more efficient. First thing I would do is say, we need to clean this. You need to get rid of every single piece of product and equipment and tool that you don't need, and keep exactly what you need just for this area, and everything else put in a storage shed or put somewhere else because you're not going to use it. Most of the time that stuff sits in your shop and you never ever use it.
Mhm. Yeah, the other thing that I'm still in a two-car garage, so you talk about small shop, that's about as almost as small as you can get. I would add to that, if it can be put on wheels, it needs to be put on wheels. It can be mounted to the wall
Oh yeah.
or the ceiling, it needs to be mounted to the wall or the ceiling, and that because you wanna free up that floor space, right? Like, it you just you need the
Yeah, everything in
space.
my shop is on wheels,
Mhm.
and it's important to have every single thing on wheels so you can push and move things around and
Yep.
sweep. But keep your shop clean and you will become a lot more efficient. And
Yep.
then decide what you're doing. Are you So, for example, in your case, are you working? Do you just like to work from home and you have the business right size for you, or are you looking to get a shop and get employees? Like, what is your business goals?
We will eventually move to that. We were actually in the process of moving to that before everything went batshit crazy. Um, and I was a little bit kind of how we were talking before. Like I was making the things that I thought I should make. Like they weren't the things that I wanted to make, and I hated going to the shop. It was just a terrible. I just I hated it, so I avoided it as much as possible. Um, and so right now we're actually in the process. It's been a really good thing having it still here at the house. It's close by. And now that I'm in the process of switching everything over to what I want to make, um, it has been really good. And I just happened to come across some people who are talking about some things that you're very similar to what you're talking about, like keep your space clean. Um, and I switched to that. It's chaos right now because I know you saw like we've got the new saw that just came in. We've got a ton of new tools, so everything needs to get its own place now. And So things are chaos, but like it's really difficult to explain to someone who hasn't done that, like get rid of all the extra stuff, clean everything. The just the it's almost like giving your brain a bath. It's as weird as that sounds. Like you just get this sense of calm and just like it's just an exhale. It's amazing. And so where I'm at right now is we are in the process of switching over to get things clean and efficient, like we were talking about just then. And we're going to start doing a lot more media type stuff, which is very unusual in our industry because most people don't do that, right? Like, I mean, think about any of our main peers. Like, we don't have YouTube channels, right? And so that's the main focus right now is actually to build out 2 YouTube channels and of course the podcast. So I'm in a really, really weird, unique situation. Um, a lot of the questions that I'm asking, I'm trying to help other people who are in a position where I was earlier because I know the growing pains that I went through, and then trying to get answers to questions that I will need going forward. And But, but I like that you talked about so we talked about the 2 things is having methods and systems in place so that you can set up the business that you want for the life that you want, and also
That's the most important.
and then keeping your options open, being aware of these things that are going on around you, which is a perfect segue to you have multiple lines of business, right? What are those lines of businesses and how did they some of these ancillary that well, I guess the main ancillary one come to be?
So I started my first business as a property management company. It's called Sandoval Property Management, and we got our first rental property, and we were managing, just the property, the cleanup, the remodeling, and stuff like that.
Mhm,
And we got a few properties under our belt before I ever did WhiteStone concrete design. So I had a little bit of an idea of how to get a business license and how to have some sort of a product. In this case, it was renting, property and just dealing with customers, which would be tenants. And it's a lot more hands off. It's a lot more passive. That's why I like property. The second business I started was Whitestone Concrete Design, which we talked about earlier,
mhm,
and that's become very successful. And I've had as many as 4 or 5 employees at one time, and now I'm down to just myself and an apprentice. And the reason I'm doing that is because we have a lot more things. I'm trying to run a business instead of just work as a self-employed
mhm,
contractor. Right? I did that for long enough, and so now I'm trying to run a business. And my third business, which is part of Whitestone Concrete Design, but it's a product line I have called Steel Hair. A lot of people on here, they know me from selling that product. A lot of people use it. Back in 2019, we were running into problems with our sinks. So our biggest market here in Utah is Park City. They would no longer accept concrete sinks during the inspection because they didn't have a UPC listing on the
mhm,
bottom. We didn't even know what it was. And once we did the research on it and found out what it was, we went through the process. It took about 9 months. They quoted us a price that seemed pretty reasonable, and that about tripled in price when we were said and done with it, with all the testing and just everything, all the loops that you have to jump through to get everything, approved. And the last part that we could not pass was the abrasion and color fastness and basically the surface test. So UPC will take, they don't care if it's acrylic, porcelain, stainless steel, stone, concrete, whatever you're making a sink out of, it could be copper, whatever it is, they do the same test. So they run a 9 page testing report. They start off with dropping a ball bearing from like 2 feet in the air and do an impact test. And then they do an abrasion test and a UV stable test and a bacteria test, all kinds of stuff on the surface. And so none of the sealers, unfortunately, that we tried would pass the test. We tried about 3 different attempts at passing. And every time we failed, it was another, geez, it was probably $4,000 or $5,000 for every retest. and it was getting really, really, we were getting towards the end thinking maybe we're not going to get a UPC listing. And I was at the impression that I didn't think anybody could pass one of these tests. I was about ready to just slap epoxy on a concrete sample and send it down, or some polyaspartic or something, ugly that I would never actually put on an artisan piece,
Mm-hmm.
and just pass the test, because they don't need to know what the product is. The product is the overall, whatever you're sending them. It's the sealer, it's the concrete. They don't care what the substrate is.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to know what sand you're using or anything. They just want to test it. And so we found a chemist and worked with him, and we got a sealer that passed the test with flying colors. And we were pretty impressed with it. So we used it for about a year. We didn't tell anybody about it. I was going to start, competing just by the fact I had a sealer that was working better than anything else in the market. And I never told anybody about it, but it's a small community, and people started asking me. I talked to a lot of people on the phone, and they were complaining about sealers and sealer problems, and I never had problems, and they're going, what are you doing, what are you using? And I finally told a few people, and one thing led to another. We got the rights to the patent, and we created a website and a logo and community on Facebook, and we started selling the sealer, and we're about 2 years in, and it's growing every month. The sales are continuing to increase, and everybody's having just really good success with it. It's been really nice to see the success that a lot of people have had. There was a lot of work in the beginning to try to figure out how to use it in different environments and different
Mm-hmm.
shops and different climates, and figuring out the shipping and just the logistics of getting stuff.
Oh yeah.
But after 2 years, we've got it down pretty good, and it's a good product. So we easily could have started it and put it out for a year, and people could have stopped buying it. People could have been unsuccessful with it. They could have had problems. We have markets in Australia. We have markets in Europe. Those customers have repurchased from us several times um, over the past 2 years, and they have no complaints. They said it's a great product. All their customers like it. All of their customers like it. So yeah, we're doing great with Seal Hair, and that's been a lot of fun. That's the kind of business that I want to run going forward, because I get to do the things that I like. I get to talk to people. I get to be creative with marketing. I get to make videos for people to see, and I get to help out the industry, because there's a lot of people that have found a lot of success in finding a sealer. No sealer is perfect, but this one, for the most part, does what you're hoping a sealer will do, which is just protect the work that you're putting it in,
Mm-hmm.
and allow people to live on the surface you're giving them, as if it was a surface designed for the purpose. So, for example, a kitchen, you should be able to put soap bottles on it. You should be able to put wet things on it. You should be able to get food and wine and stain it, and it should clean. And that's all you expect from a sealer. And then, on the other side of the coin, it actually looks really beautiful. It comes out and it looks nice and it feels nice. So it's not only a high performance product, but it has really good artisan characteristics, which is what we're looking for, which is something that looks great and feels great and has a nice matte finish. Um, so we've got a lot of plans for it. We've got a lot of stuff developing, and that's going to be coming out soon. But yeah, those are the three businesses I got right now.
So, full transparency for anybody who's listening, I use Seal Hair. This isn't an infomercial for Seal Hair, but I think it's important that anybody who comes on here gets to talk about the things that they're doing, uh, whether they sell the product or they're using a product, and um, so that's why I'm doing this. I don't want it to seem like I'm pushing this on anyone. Um, this has just been one of the only sealers for whatever reason. My uh, mannerisms when I'm going through and putting a sealer on something, like I am terrible at applying sealers for whatever reason. And seal hair has been one of the only ones that I've been able to fix the things that I screw up. I
Yeah,
still I still make these mistakes. Okay. I'm still not the great at applying them, but I like that I can easily fix it on the tail end. But like you mentioned, like no sealer is perfect. Uh Are there certain areas where you're say that you would say, like, seal hair, like, really shines in these types of atmospheres or situations?
Uh, for, are you saying like for the customer or for the
For
artisan?
the
For
customer.
the app,
Yeah.
for the customer, well, it's the durability. I
Mhm.
mean, 100% durability. The abrasion resistance is excellent, better than any sealer I've found. The chemical resistance is off the charts. I mean, there's nothing on the market that has a chemical resistance. I know the chemistry, the patent, and how and why the product is and does what it does and how it's made. I work with my chemist. I talk to him every week. He's an awesome guy. I get to go into his chemistry lab,
Mhm.
sit down, look at stuff, take questions from customers directly to him in person and talk with the guy. And he does tests for me and shows me not only, you know, from from just telling me what's going on, he'll show me examples, from tests
Mhm.
of why this happens or why this happens. So the abrasion resistance is excellent and the stain resistance is excellent. I mean, there's virtually nothing that will stain it. Even mustard or turmeric or something like that. You just take a little bit of acetone, nail polish remover on a rag, and just wipe through it. Even if it stays on after they've cleaned it with just soap and water,
Mhm.
it'll clean it right up. So stain resistance, water resistance, and abrasion resistance, that's where it shines. You can put a kitchen in, it functions like a kitchen. You could put a sink in and it functions like a sink. You can put a commercial sink in a building that gets high use in a bar. I just saw a picture from almost 3 years ago from a super busy bar downtown Salt Lake that gets hundreds and hundreds of people every day and just gets completely thrashed. And my brother went to the bar the other day and sent me a picture, and he's looks perfect. And he said, "Hey, still going strong." I didn't know he was at the bar, and
Mhm.
sent me a picture, and I was like, "Oh yeah, looks great," And it was just filthy. I mean, it had just napkins on it and soap bottles and water all over it, and it still functions. So I want functionality from the products I use,
Mhm.
and that is exactly where it shines. Now it shines in different ways for the applicator as well. If you want to talk about that,
Yeah, I would like you to talk about that because that was it. I know I both of us are not really fond of the term setting expectations, but most people understand what that is. Um, like there are a lot of topical sealers where if you set expectations, or whatever that means to whoever's listening, if you set them properly, there's a lot of sealers, regardless of what it is, as long as the person knows what they're getting, you can get away with all of your top sealers. We'll put it that way. If you're getting something
right?
off of Amazon, just know that you're playing with fire. But the top ones, as long as the person knows what they're getting, you can work with it. But the application is one of the things that I really like. So yes, I would love for you to talk about like how it shines for the applicator or the artisan, however the person would like to
I would
categorize
say the number
themselves.
one thing is how much time it takes to put on. I mean, you are spending so much less time putting my sealer on seal hair than any other sealer that I've used. Most sealers take, multiple applications, multiple coats. I've been in my shop for an entire day putting sealer on. I've got a kitchen with 5 pieces and 2 sinks and a fire pit. That would take 2 days to get all the coats of sealer on it. And in fact, sometimes I've had to go in on a Saturday morning and work till 1 o'clock, getting the last final coats on. You have to polish out. Sometimes we get roller lines. You have to burnish out each coat. They're just, it was just a lot of work,
Mhm.
you know. And with seal hair, you pretty much put one coat on and that's done. It takes me, if I'm doing a sink or a kitchen, it usually takes me longer to set up my station,
Mhm.
set up my sealer, and mix the sealer than it does to actually apply the sealer.
Yeah.
So it saves you a ton of time. And with the new methods that we have, which is just the first coat, you just want to roll it out. Doesn't matter how you put it on. You can put it on sloppy. You could literally get a napkin and wipe the stuff on it. Just getting the sealer on the surface.
Mhm.
Everything is done with the dry back roller. So it's super forgiving. And then just like you mentioned, it just has like a forgiving nature to it once you learn it. Now there is a learning curve to it.
Yes.
And I see the biggest learning curve is when somebody comes from a different type of topical sealer and they're used to a method, and they want to be really careful because those sealers, you have to be very careful and precise and meticulous the way you put them on.
Mm-hmm.
You have to kind of start on the left and work through. Whereas with seal hair, you just put the stuff on and just back roll it and it's done. The more effort you put into trying to make it look good, the worse it's going to look. You just want to put it on like you're giving it to a 14-year-old kid that's never put sealer on or painted it and just tell him to put it on. He probably put it on most of the time better than what somebody trying too hard would put it on. So ease of application, and then it's just forgiving when it comes to a scratch or repair in the field because it's so durable and abrasion resistant. You can go back and you can simply mix up a little sealer, strike through a scratch, back roll it, sand over it. You're not going to sand through the sealer. You can repair with epoxies. There's different repairs that we have, but the repairs are super reasonable and fast for fixing stuff in the field if you ever got a scratch. And when I say scratch, it's not an abrasion from somebody dragging a wine bottle or a beer bottle or a plate across it, or just normal use. It's somebody cutting or doing something that causes
Mm-hmm.
damage, right? So we're talking about damage repair versus maintenance. Uh, but it's just very repairable in the field. So I've had like really, really tremendous success with it with my own business. I use it myself. And so those things are really good for the artisan. The other thing is that we don't have the same shelf life issues that another, type of topical or any other type of sealers. They typically have some sort of a sunset on them. Maybe it's 3 or 6 months, but eventually that product is going to have some sort of shelf life. And you just don't really know how long it's been sitting on the distributor shelf by the time you get it, and then it sits on your shelf for a month or two. You just don't know where that window lies. Whereas with our product, when it's unopened, it'll stay good for 5 years.
Mm-hmm. So there, let's. So where is a good place if somebody wants to go check out information on seal hair? What would be the best place for them to go to get that information?
The website is sealhair.com.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty easy to find, and it's hair like your head, seal hair. And if anybody wonders what the funny name is, we were just going to call it sealer because sealers are so frustrating and such a pain in the ass. We just wanted to be sarcastic. We were just going to call it sealer, just like a generic name. But then seal hair kind of sounds like sealer,
Mm-hmm.
and if you kind of say it with some kind of funny accent, so and it's kind of a shop joke too, because we say, tools, we'll say like, go get the ham hair instead of the hammer. It's just kind of shop slang. So the two and two just kind of went together and we just came up with a funny name and came up with a funny logo. We didn't want to take ourselves really serious when we came out with it. We didn't want to, tell people that this is the best sealer, the last sealer you're ever going to need. It's the best thing on the market. We just wanted to have fun with it. We wanted to not take ourselves serious. We kind of wanted to just be smart asses and sarcastic and put something out and just say, hey, look, try it or don't try it. Use other sealers, use this one, use it where it works. It doesn't matter because a sealer, you can't sell a sealer. They said they have to sell themselves. If they work, they sell, and if they don't work, they just don't sell.
Mm-hmm. Are there um, any primary recommendations that you would give to people if they wanted to use seal hair? Let's say that they're coming from another product. So for example, like you need to wear a respirator. Like you don't like it's you need to wear
Yeah,
a
I mean, it's
respirator.
got a solvent. It's a
Yep.
solvent-based sealer, so it's gonna, you're gonna definitely want to wear a respirator. You're gonna want to open a window and turn a fan on or whatever it
Hmm.
is. Some people are less sensitive to the smell. Some people are. It's just one of those things. And I tell people you just have to decide what kind of product you want to put out. If you want to have a high performance sealer, then do what it takes to set an environment up where that sealer is something you can use.
Hmm.
And if you've got a small shop or you're working out of your house and you just don't want to deal with solvents, then it's just not the sealer for you.
Hmm.
Or if you want to use it, then work towards getting a shop and a booth or whatever you need to do. Work towards getting yourself a situation. So we've had a lot of people in Europe that I've talked to. I talked to my distributor there today, and he said he's had a couple people try it. They couldn't deal with the smell, and they stopped. They said they just couldn't use it. And then 3 or 4 weeks later, they called them back saying, "Okay, the sealer's just too good. From what we've seen, I have to figure out how to use it." And they went ahead and invested a few $100 in a mask or something to make it more comfortable for them to use. And I've seen mostly that's what people have done. And I always tell people, just decide what kind of business you want to run and then have a goal and work towards it. Same thing with products. If you want to put out a product that's high performance, then just do whatever it takes to invest in equipment that's going to make it comfortable for you and use it. And if you want to be in a situation where you have a non-solvent based sealer because of just ease of application or just your sensitivity to it, then you just have to, like you say, use that product and then set expectations for your customers, and that's the product you're putting out.
Hmm. Um, this may not this may not be the question that you want to want to answer, but I feel that it's important to maybe put it out there. Are there any situations where you would say, or maybe a piece is going up, maybe it's a specific type of place, like a fireplace around, or it's just or just the piece itself, or the environment that it is going in, where you're like, I mean, just use another sealer because seal hair is overkill. Does that make sense? Is there
Stair treads,
stair treads?
stair treads. Yep, stair treads. Yeah, and not that it wouldn't be a good product for stair treads, an interior stair tread, exterior stair tread. Price per square foot, we're super close to pretty much everything that's on the market. I
Hmm.
think we're landing at about $1.05 per square foot for the raw product. And then once you put shipping and you put in your accessory materials like your rollers,
Hmm.
paint trays, tape, and stuff like that, you land at about $1.50 a square foot, somewhere close to that. So I wouldn't say it's from a price point standard. It's just it's a high it's a very hard coat. And so, for example, if you put it on a stair tread exterior, somebody's going to drag a barbecue up and down it. Somebody's going to take a wheelbarrow down it. Somebody's going to bring landscaping something. And with any topical, once you have a scratch through that coating, water can migrate into it.
Hmm.
And once you have water migrating into a scratch, you're going to have darkening and you're just going to have a problem. So for a stair tread, especially like an exterior landscape stair tread, I would use what people use for exterior concrete, like on a driveway, which is just a water-based bottom of the food chain acrylic
Hmm.
that just goes on. It's almost like a sacrificial layer. It's going to give you some protection, but it's not such a hard, dense, thick coating that once you penetrate through, it's going to cause problems. They're just meant to kind of abrade off, burn off through the sun, and then they get recoated either every year or every other year,
Hmm.
or some people just never recoat them. But I would treat it next year stair tread, um, similar to how you would treat just a driveway. So stuff like that. Planters as well, unless you're doing a decorative planter that's going to have a liner in it that's going to hold the water. And I would recommend this for any type of topical sealer. If you're going to do a planter, if you don't seal the backside, which I would never seal the backside of concrete, that's a debate that we could have another time. But some people would seal that, but still, no matter what you do, if you're sealing backer mix and you put, just like say a solvent based acrylic on the backside, you're not going to get 100%. You're going to get holes. You're going to get pinholes. Water will get through that if you have dirt and water constantly go
Hmm.
through. Water is going to find its way through. And once it gets between your two coatings, you're just going to have ghosting, you're going to have water issues and stuff like that. So anytime it comes to like an exterior planter or like a stair tread, I would always use a bottom of the food chain, water-based acrylic or solvent-based acrylic, something that is a single component that's easy to repair, that's a thin coating that will allow water to, vapor transmission in and out and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Everything else I use seal hair for: fireplace rounds, mantles, hearths, sinks, fire pits, um, um, kitchen countertops, decorative pieces in a house. I use it on everything else.
Hmm. Yeah, there a lot of the guys that I
I
know.
would say probably on wall panels as well, depending on how many wall panels you're doing.
Hmm.
I would just use just a bottom of the food chain water based acrylic on something like that because you want something that dries quickly.
Hmm.
And if you got 18 panels you're doing, you just want to put something on, especially if they're hung up on the wall and they're not going to be,
Right.
you just want something to resist somebody dropping a glass of wine or a kid dropping, a bowl of cereal or something splashing off, just something that's going to act like a latex paint that you can wipe and clean down. That's all the protection you need for. Those are the three things that I always tell people probably not use seal hair on.
Yeah. See, I think it's always impressive when a manufacturer supplier is willing to say the like use something else or be mindful in this situation or things like that, because like the thing is, there really is no perfect product for every situation. Um,
No,
and in some of those situations, it could literally come down to purely an aesthetic, right? So, like, maybe you don't want an enhanced type look. Maybe you want something that's very, very natural, I guess is a way to say it, because while seal hair does look amazing, I love how it looks. It doesn't look as natural, like a natural stone, as some other sealers. And I'm not poking fun at any sealers, and I'm not going to mention any of them. Um, but in those particular case, like if you're doing a fireplace around, it comes like hopefully nobody is throwing wine on their fireplace around. So you can pick
they do though.
aesthetics.
They put candles. They put
Yep.
candles for Christmas. People have parties and they put wine and leave cups and all kinds of stuff like that. You'd be surprised what can go on a hearth. I've seen stains just from contractors putting, they're building a house and the contractor put a Subway cup, or a McDonald's cup, and it just left it for 3 days and the
Mhm.
bottom sogged out, or a coffee cup, and it,
Mm.
everything leached out and all of a sudden you have a ring. So I always do it for fireplace surrounds. But I know what you're saying. I mean, I myself have like two or three different sealers in my shop that I use for just different
Yep.
situations because I don't think sealers are something that you just buy one of. You can use different sealers for different situations.
Mhm.
It's just like having different tools. You got hammers and you got drills and you got chisels and stuff like that. That's why having a good system and a good mindset for how you're running a business, you'll have certain products that you trust and certain tools. And once you get comfortable with them, it's a lot easier when you're running a business when something happens to look back at the situation and say, okay, what went wrong here? Well, if you're using a sealer consistency or a mix design consistency consistently or a bag mix concrete consistently, you'll have like a good idea of all the steps you've taken, and then you can go back and isolate what could have gone wrong
Mhm.
with it, and it helps you identify and work towards fixing problems quicker. And then through that experience, you can develop a good system on your shop to where, like you talked about lead times,
Mhm.
you're a lot more comfortable on those lead times.
Right. Um, so s- that's probably a good way for us to segue straight into as an industry, we're small, right? And there we take certain things from other industries that are larger than us and we can kind of apply those into ours. So we always have these new products that are coming in. Um, so it's important to try new things sometimes depending on what the thing is. And but you need to be careful, right? Because it can throw a wrench into that system that you've taken many months or years to develop. And maybe this kind of speaks back to the systems that you were talking about, where you kind of need to develop a framework to bring in newer things and test them, but not say like throw the baby out with the bathwater type thing. Do you have any specific uh, systems that you have in place to test newer things to see if maybe you can up a certain area of your business or things like that?
Well, what I found through doing, tech support and talking to a lot of people, a lot of people don't have a need to change to a new product unless there's some issue with the product or something it's not solving for them or something that they're not getting out of that product. I've had the same mix design for years and years and years with the same sand, same cement, same polymers. Those products have been fine. There's no reason to change those, right? So what I found is usually when people are looking for a new type of product, going from like a tool to a new tool, you're just usually upgrading to a nicer tool,
Hmm.
but it does the same work like a table saw, right? Whereas the products that we use in our industry, um, I found that most of the time people start out with something and then they start changing stuff when they're having problems with it. So with us, 100%, I recommend anybody that calls me and wants to try my sealer, and this is the true with anything, is do not get the sealer on a Thursday night and call me on the phone saying, okay, I got this sink. I got to get it installed tomorrow morning. And I'm like, have you ever used the sealer? And it's like, no. And I'm like, you will 100% have problems if you try to put this on tonight and you've never put it on.
Mm-hmm.
So even in our installation, in our application instructions, we always tell people when you get the sealer, stick just as a good business mindset and a good business owner, stay with the product that you're using. Um, Test our sealer. Use it. Make something for your house. Make a table for your friend.
Mm-hmm.
Make something, even a sample piece. Make something that's realistic, like a sink or something big enough that you can actually get a good feel for it. Put the sealer on and then do several tests. Do a bomb test, do, like an aesthetic test, like what does it look like? Do you have roller lines? And it's much easier for you to call me on the phone and have me tech support a sample piece versus tech support something that you installed and you're saying, I got the sealer last night. We just installed this. There's roller lines here or something. I'm like, well, we could have tech supported that easily. So always become comfortable with your products. And it's the same if you're going to change the type of concrete you use or polymers or anything. You want to test those a few times, get comfortable with them, and then add those into your business. And any good business owner would do something like that. So that's what we do.
So what? So let's say that you've made a couple pieces for yourself. You're trying out a new sealer. You're trying out a bag product, or maybe you're switching sands. Like it could be something as specific as that. You made a couple pieces for yourself and you're ready to kind of move on to the next phase. You're ready to make a piece for a client, for example. Is there any types of things that you have like on your computer or something like that to keep track of where those pieces are and something that you changed on them? Like, how do you remember? Because it could be, say, 6 months, 8 months, a year down the road when something happened and the person needs help. You have to remember those different things that you did to that piece in order to address
So
them.
right. So this is what we were talking about earlier when I say people will start a business and they'll have a singular mindset about some specific aspect of the business. Maybe it's marketing, maybe it's maybe it's being a super good artisan and they can post stuff on Instagram and be super impressive and they're super focused on just the quality or the artisanship of the work and they're not focused on other parts of the business. So the other parts of your business you can't ignore, like your accounting, your bookkeeping, your customer files and stuff like that. And one of the things that we do is every single customer, we track them through QuickBooks. We have a QuickBooks invoice and estimate. It tells me everything that's in there, and then I put that in a job folder. And in the job folder, we physically write out all the dimensions, the sealer, the colors, and everything like that. So I
Hmm.
could go back through a filing cabinet or my computer and I could look at the customer, the date that we started the job, the day we finished the job, the day we installed it, what color it is, what we used as far as any of the stuff, any of the information that I need. It's all in the customer file. So,
Hmm.
just for example, I had a customer call me back from, geez, it was almost 6 years ago, and we used a sealer that's given her problems. This is way before I had, access to Seal Hair or any of the products I'm using now, and I was able to go back through and I found the customer's invoice. I was able to see what was used, and I was like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. I remember what this is. I know how to go back and do some sort of maintenance on it. It wasn't maintenance; it was damage. It was damage caused by the customer, and doing everything that was in the contract with them that said not to do, like leaving wet stuff and leaving a mess on the countertop. So I mean,
Hmm.
I could show the customer and I sent them a copy of the invoice. I said, here's the care instructions and the top three things that are on the care instructions, like you obviously didn't follow, right? And I'll come back and I'll fix this for you, but this is repair work. This is not maintenance work. Maintenance work would be somebody calling you, hey, my countertops look great. We've had them for 5 years. We love them, but they're just looking, they just look not as fresh as when we put them in. There's a few abrasions and stuff like that. Is there any way you could freshen them up? It's like, yeah, we'll come in, we'll wipe them down with acetone. We'll give them a little sand. We'll put a new fresh coat on them. Good to go for another 5, 10, 15 years, you know. But repair work is different. So having a good customer file and understanding where you keep those, if it's online or in a filing cabinet or both, which is what I do.
Hmm.
A lot of people they don't focus on those little aspects of their business, and then that stuff comes back, and it's much more difficult to deal with situations, in the future if you don't have good bookkeeping, good stuff for your tax accountant. And the other thing I tell people too is make sure you're doing everything the right way, because you never know if you start a business, you're taking cash, or you're being funny with your invoices and you're not recording everything. Something's going into Venmo, something's going into PayPal. Eventually, if you get a really good business one day, all of a sudden you had, just a product that takes off, and you've got 15 employees, and you have this great business, you want to sell it one day, or you get a tax audit or any of those things. If all of a sudden you go back and you're like, man, at the beginning, the first 5 years I ran my business, I just was so stupid when it came to
Hmm.
doing my taxes right. I should have just paid, $500 a year and had an accountant file my taxes for me. All those things in the beginning of a business, you have to do things the right way in the beginning. And if you're not doing them, you need to start doing them right, now. But don't forget about all those little small aspects of running a business.
Yeah, the it can be tempting to kind of cut corners with certain things depending on a person's like natural proclivities, right? Sometimes it's for some people it's uh kind of being a little bit loose on taxes. Sometimes it's the quality of the
Yep.
product that they put out. Sometimes like they're
Yeah.
they're it can be tricky. And
Well, and what I tell people is I'm like, can you tell me what you're doing Thursday, like 3 Thursdays ago at 3 o'clock? Can you remember what you were doing?
no.
Exactly. So when people call me and they have a problem and it's Thursday at 3 o'clock, and I tell them the right way to fix something, if they just go ahead and take the extra time and do the work it takes to get it done the right way, they're not going to remember that Thursday, 3 weeks from now, but it might come back and haunt them 3 years from now or 3 months from now. If there's a crack or something and they just have to get it installed, the contractor says, the plumber's coming tomorrow, this has got to be in, and they do it at all costs. I'm like, just saving a couple hours here is going to cause you way more problems down the road. And
Hmm.
if you put a whole bunch of projects out like that, maybe 2 or 3 years down the road, you get an avalanche of phone calls with all kinds of problems, or maybe even 2 or 3 months down the road, you get an avalanche of phone calls. So do things the right way and take the time that you need to get things done correctly, because once it's over, and you're not going to remember that it took you an extra 2 days or an extra week. Sometimes I've taken projects and they've taken an extra 3 or 4 weeks
Hmm.
sometimes. So, but I just know better. I've been down that road where I've tried to cut corners and make a contractor happy and get something in, and it wasn't quite the quality that I wanted, or there was a crack on the edge or something. I've learned it's easier just do it right the first time, because then once it's installed and you've got the proper products and sealers and stuff on there, and you've educated your customers on your contract, usually you never hear back from them. So that's a really good way for, especially in concrete, to try to run your business that way.
Yeah, the and maybe this goes back to what we were talking at the very very beginning of fear is not being is like being fearful of being honest with the client
A hundred
or the
percent.
person that's like one person removed, right? Like a designer. Like if you're now granted, it's just full transparency of I don't have near the breadth of work that you do, but I'd be interested to see your take on this of I've never run into a professional that is a true professional, not just someone that says I'm a pro. Like screw those people, but someone who's a genuine professional when you're honest with them. You need to say it in a way that people can stomach. Obviously, they don't be a dick about it, but like when you're honest about what happened and you're clear about the path forward, most people uh, they really appreciate that. 'Cause honesty seems to be quite rare these days.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, you have to be honest with your customers. 100%.
like, I don't remember your exact phrase that you said in the beginning, but it was genius. It was just like 2 or 3 words that are different. Um, I can't remember. I'll have to go back and listen to it, but it was basically the gist is, like, "This is what we're aiming for, but this is a custom product. There are plenty of things that could potentially extend or even contract the timeline a bit. We're going to do our best to get it done within this time frame. But know that I mean things can happen. And then if something ends up taking a little bit longer on the tail end, you call them up and be like, "Look, I'm sorry, this is going to take 3 days, a week longer. This is why I want to make sure that you get the best product from me possible." I cannot
Yeah, I
imagine
always
somebody being like, "No, I want it installed now."
yeah, I tell people this is an artisan handcrafted product.
Mhm,
And because of that, it's going to, this is what the estimate is on the lead time, but it could be longer if we run into any problems. And we're just going to make sure they have the best quality that we can give them. And it has to pass our quality standards before it comes out the door.
mhm,
The other advice I'd give people when it comes to customers, especially contractors, regardless of whatever's happening, never get in an argument with contractors. Never get in never get in an argument. I mean, don't lay over and let people walk on you. But the best thing that you can do is stay calm, listen to what they're saying, let them complain, even if they're yelling at you. And then at the end of it, say, okay, well, still, this is the situation we're in. And the only way to move forward and solve it and make sure this is done right is for me to have extra time or for me to recast this because there's nothing else that could be done.
mhm.
So it's you're telling them where the line is. And if you get in an argument with them or you piss them off, usually they're not going to call you back. But if you just tell them, hey, this has got to be the sink's got to be in Thursday, and they chew you out for a minute, and it's like, all right, but like we talked about, this is an artisan handcrafted product, and if it's not ready to go out of the shop, it's not ready to go out of the shop. But I educate people on that when they call me. I tell them I'm the most expensive person in town. I have excellent quality. Everything that goes in is going to be something that they're really proud of and that they really enjoy. And I said, when you work with somebody like me, you have to understand that when we make this stuff, concrete has a mind of its own. It could rain one day and it could take longer for the water to cure out of it. The
Mhm.
sealer could go on an enhanced weird. I could have polished it wrong. Whatever it is, I need the time it takes to make the product that I put out that you're buying from me. So as long as they understand that, I've never ever had an issue with a customer ever. I shouldn't say never, but I would say the customers that I give that expectation to, there's not a problem that can't be solved or that doesn't end a relationship. That's a better way to put it.
Yeah, the something that I heard on a podcast here recently that I thought was genius, that I hadn't thought about it like that this way, but it makes perfect sense, is um, good communication creates a like a high-end experience or a luxurious experience, or I don't remember the exact term that they use, but it's just like that can that can be like the difference between you and a like subpar supplier or manufacturer or artisan, whatever. Like, just think back to any of the most recent interactions that you've had with somebody who calls himself a professional, and like you're just sitting there wondering, like, is my thing in? Like where are we at? Like it having those open loops that are just kind of running in the back of your mind are never good, and you want to close those for people. You don't wanna have them just, like, leaving them out there, even if it's like you follow up with them on a Friday to let them know, like, "We're still on track, everything's going good," or whatever your time frame is that you let people know, but having good communication is it creates a luxurious experience for the client, which sounds so weird to say and hear, but it makes perfect sense when you think
It
about
creates
how
a
it's
more
happened to you.
personal it creates a more personal experience with your customer because they realize you're making them something by hand. We're not creating the concrete from the earth, but it's
Mhm.
not unlike if you're making a table out of wood, it's almost as if we're cutting the tree, milling the
Yep.
planks and doing everything. I mean, we're starting with sand and cement and creating something that's an art piece for people.
Mhm.
So I always tell people, this is something that's you're going to be proud of. It's something that's going to be in your home. That's a piece that you can talk to your friends about, and it's just a much more personal experience. And people will spend money for things: fire pits, kitchen countertops, sinks, fire pits, exterior barbecues, just really cool pieces in their house. they will spend the money. And if you give them a good personal experience, they're going to recommend you and they're going to be happy. When people are upset with you or a contractor, they will tell other people that not
Oh
to
yeah.
use you or they. But if they're happy with you, you're lucky if you get them to tell one person,
Yeah.
you know. But your work will speak for itself, especially if it's in a prominent community. If somebody comes
Mhm.
over and sees a beautiful fire pit, I mean, we've sold more fire pits because we get a phone call and somebody says, I went over to my friend's house and they said you had a fire pit and this thing is just beautiful. And we sat out and hung out with it all night and they gave me your phone number. So,
Mhm.
you know, yeah, just creating a good personal experience. I want to go back to the professional thing you were talking about
Mhm.
and some advice that I'd like to kind of offer to a lot of people. I know people that are really professional in some aspects of their business. Maybe they're just amazing at making molds. Maybe they're amazing at marketing. Maybe they're amazing. Like, and we all know these people. We know people that are just like masters at marketing. They never touch concrete and they have these huge businesses that are, 50 employees and they sell millions a year. We know people that is a one man show and the stuff they post on Instagram or Facebook, you're just like, geez, this is like just amazing work. Like the work they do, it's got metal and wood
Mhm.
and concrete and it's just put in and it looks like it could be in a magazine. But depending on what kind of business you want to be, I always tell people like yourself, if you want to just do really unique custom pieces and you want to be a one man show, focus more on those things. But if you just want to have a really good, solid business, become a little bit of a professional in each little part of your business. So you don't have to be the best casting concrete guy. You don't have to be the best mold making guy. You don't have to be the best employee manager guy or the best boss. But if you're kind of good at all of those things, and you make sure you spend time on your accounting and your bookkeeping and how you're dealing with your employees payroll, making sure they're paid on time, how you're dealing with developing an employee, or training them to do the job. If you spend a little bit of time on all of those things across the board, you're going to have a really, really good, successful business. That's what I try to do. I just try to be pretty good at all of those things. I don't have to be the best at all of them, and then I focus a little bit more on some of the things like, the finish and the casting and stuff because I want to have a really good product. But I try not to ignore all the other parts of my business. And cleaning a shop is one of those things.
Mhm. Are there since there's so many different facets to uh having a business regardless of how many people you have working for you, are there any um other than Rich Dad Poor Dad, are there any other resources that you would highly recommend to people to look into, whether it's like books or podcast or a class of some kind?
For what?
Just anything business related, even if it's like concrete specific. Maybe it's running a business. Maybe it's
Well, give me an example of something
okay. So
specific
for
because there's a lot of
example,
aspects of running a business, right?
so
So
for
it could be on
example,
an accounting side, marketing side, it could be on an artistic side because there's a lot of different resources for each one.
so let's put it this way. I would recommend anybody who wants to make their own pieces, not just get designs from like a designer, is they absolutely have to read Show Your Work and Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. Like that is an example of like if you want to create your own pieces, you absolutely have to read those books. Period. So something along those lines. If it's a podcast, I would say
Well, I would say, man, there's a lot of different resources, right? If you're trying to learn how to become like a good artisan casting concrete and stuff like we talked about earlier, getting some sort of a mentor and being able to
mhm,
make a direct phone call to people, that's a good resource for that. If you want to learn about money and just what money is and how to manage money separate, completely separate from running a business, but just understanding what money is, you can read The Richest Man at Babylon and Rich Dad Poor Dad. Both of
mhm,
those books are really good. There's another one called The Strangest Secret. It's a book you could read in one day. Those are three really good books about money and just what it is, how not to be afraid of it, how to be not be afraid of losing it, and how you can make money work, because money is a thing that's just created by people. It's not a
Hmm.
real thing. It's not a tangible thing like,
It's a
you
tool.
know, like your arm
Hmm.
or the air outside or something. It's created by people. So because it's created by people, it can be manipulated. And there's some people that become millionaires and some people that, suffer for money and some people that do great and middle class and whatever. Those are good resources for mindset. If you want good resources on the parts of your business, this is what I tell people: focus on the stuff that you do well in your business, and everything else you don't do well in your business, hire somebody else and pay them to do it. So don't try to do your own taxes. Hire an accountant and that's a perfect resource for taxes and
Hmm.
managing, your books and stuff like that. Hire an accountant. If you're not good at bookkeeping, hire a bookkeeper. There's people that are CPAs that will just do bookkeeping, not taxes or payroll. If you're not good at paying, keeping track of your employees' payroll, hire a payroll company. Those
Hmm.
kind of things. Hire people for the things that you don't do good, so it unlocks you, so you can focus more time on the things that you do well, which might be mold making, casting, design. Some people want to focus on marketing. So invest in somebody and pay them the money that would take that they could learn how to do your casting
Hmm.
and your processing and your designs for you. You know what I mean? Might hire a designer or something like that. I've talked to people who run multi-million-dollar businesses and people who are just a one-man show and everybody on in between, and they all focus on one or two things they do really well in their business. They're aware of all the other parts of their business and they keep up on them and they're not in the dark on them. But find all those other things and just pay people the money it takes to let them do what they do well and then focus on what you do well.
Hmm. I think that's a good thing that you pointed out is sometimes there are people who really love the concrete, making things with concrete, furniture, surrounds, all that types of stuff. They like that, but they don't actually like making it, right? But they love the business side of it. Like I've come across some of the people that are like that. Like
Yep.
we're not saying that, okay, well, you need to be the person that makes the thing and then outsource all that other stuff. You could be that other person. You could be the one that's just the business owner or the CFO or the marketer and pay people to make the pieces. Or
Yep.
maybe you're the designer and you want to pay and you still don't like making the pieces. Like, okay, well, you can find people to make the piece that you design. Like that's totally a
You
thing.
can. You can. It's difficult in this industry because you have to have a pretty established business,
Mhm.
good techniques, and then you have to train them because it's not like a welder. If you were a welder, that's an established trade, and you get a welding shop and you do good and you get some customers, you can start hiring welders.
Mhm.
If you're even a cabinet builder and you do cabinets, that's an established trade. You can hire people that have worked in cabinet shops. There's a lot of people that do that's a huge business. You can hire a shop foreman, a supervisor,
Mhm.
pay them 60,000 a year and let them run a lot of that aspect of your business. Our industry in concrete is very difficult because it's a design aspect to it. There's the other thing with concrete that's so difficult. If you make a mistake with metal or wood, you can take that piece of metal off, you can take that piece of wood off, put a new piece on, and keep going with the project. If you're 2 weeks into a concrete countertop or a sink and you're getting ready to install it and you chip a big edge off of it or something, you're starting all the way over. So
Mhm.
that's the biggest that's the biggest problem I've had, is that trying to do concrete, you'll get something all the way to where you're ready to put sealer on it. And then us as the artisan, you're like, I don't dare let this kid that's 21 years old put the sealer on it. I've already spent 2 weeks on it.
Mhm.
You're thousands of dollars in the project. So concrete is a very difficult business to run unless you're going to lower your quality or prices, or you have to find where the balance is on what you
Mhm.
want to sell. Like maybe you're selling sinks or wall panels or fire pits, and there's companies that do them, but they have a balance of what each employee does, and those employees typically do one thing and one thing only all day long. And if you're going to hire employees, the biggest thing that I tell people about hiring employees: don't hire an employee and spend a long time training them and expect a lot out of an employee, because it's not their business. They're not the one that stands
Yep.
to make, profit. And so 100%, if you expect that they're going to disappoint you, they will 100% disappoint you. You just have to, you can't go to an employee and get upset about the things they're doing when they're just an employee, because they will, if you set them up to disappoint you, they will disappoint you. You just have to understand that. So if you're going to start a big business with 40 employees, you just have to have them do one thing, and that's the rule is you want to be able to train an employee within 2 to 4 weeks to do a job and start turning a profit for you, and they have to be replaceable. But if you're just working in a small shop with 1 or 2 people, you might just have a partner and yourself, and you work and you're splitting the profit. Or you could be in a situation where I am, where I've got rid of all my employees and I have an apprentice.
Mm-hmm.
And he is much different because he gets a lot more criticism and he gets a lot more workload and a lot more opportunities to make mistakes and to see situations. And I tell him a lot more about my business because he's training to one day take over the business and to learn how to do this and run the whole thing. So he has a lot more skin in the game, but a regular employee,
Mm-hmm.
they just don't have anything in the game. So you have to remember that you can't go to an employee and get upset with them because they did something wrong. And it's like, well, what kind of job did you give them to do? Are they going to be self motivated with time? They're on the clock by the time they'll take 5 hours to do something when you think it should take an hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the
So,
ways.
for example,
Go ahead.
for example, you were talking about, focusing on parts of your business. The aspect of my business that I absolutely hate is installations. I hate doing installations. I like being in my shop. I like working. I hate loading a trailer and going. And so what I've done is I've got a relationship with a moving company,
Mm-hmm.
younger kid. He's got young guys that work with him. I've been working with this guy now for 3 years, and he's been working with me enough. And I've gone with them to the job site and showed them how to install certain things. And now there's certain things that I trust that they could go install, like fire pits. That's a great one. They're super heavy. It cost me a lot more money. Yeah, I could get my forklift, put it on a trailer, take it up there, have the contractor help me lift in the stuff, and save some money. But will I pay a moving company $500, $600 to take a big fire pit up? Yeah, I could do that now. And then it leaves me open to have my whole entire shop day
Mm-hmm.
to go do another project. So hiring, people that do what they do, it's going to just open up your shop so that you can do more of what you do well and let other people just pay them for what they need to do and just charge it into the job.
Yeah, I've heard several people who they outsource the install, more standard stuff like vanities and countertops and that type of stuff. They outsource the installation of that to granite companies. They already know
Yep.
exactly how to do all that stuff. They've got all the tools to do it. They're extremely proficient at doing that. That's totally an option. And I don't even know how many people know about that, but like, yeah, thinking outside the box like that with like if you're doing furniture pieces or reception desks, like fireplaces or fire tables and that type of stuff. Like moving companies are great options. Even
Yeah.
like wall art. Moving companies are set up to take big ass heavy things off the walls and put them on. Like use them. It might
Sure.
cost you more, but that opportunity cost, right? Like that's something
Right.
that you shouldn't uh forget about. The other thing was I heard explained like this about employees is you want to aim to get an employee that is like a 6 or 7 or an 8. Like if you can find an 8 out of a 10 employee, like that's a really good employee. You're not going to find a 9 or a 10 because they're out there, they have their own business. It's the fives and belows that you want to avoid. But don't discount that like you can have several good sixes and sevens that can still do a really good job at their job. But I think too many people think that like I need to find an employee who's like a 9 out of a 10 or a 10 out of 10, like that,
Yeah,
like,
the employee thing is really difficult. It all comes down to what kind of business you're running. If
mm-hmm,
you have a business with yourself and a partner and you need one guy extra, that's tough because when you talk about like the quality of their work, they have to have a good personality working with you and
mm-hmm,
want to be around you, because you're typically, when you find a highly qualified person, they can do so many other things, and they're going to want to have health benefits and medical
mm-hmm,
benefits and a 401k, and they're going to want to work for a big corporation that has like a salary and all kinds of stuff. So you're kind of left with everybody who's not in a position to
fives and
do
below.
that or get a job like that. Yeah. So you're going to have to make do. And especially in the way the economy is,
Mm-hmm,
there's really difficult to get employees. And people think they can just hire somebody and pay them $20 an hour. and expect, something that they saw from themselves or from other employees 20 years ago. It just does not exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to create a culture of somebody who, who knows if they've got problems with, they're going to have some sort of problems, that you're going to have to deal with to get somebody that's going to come in and work in a shop with one or two people and be there long term. And if you get somebody who has a bad attitude, they can bring down the whole entire shop. I mean, I've
Mm-hmm.
run a shop with 4 or 5 people in it, and one guy can bring down the whole shop. So personalities matter. But my biggest thing with hiring employees, if you want to do super high end custom work like we do, just get a partner and do two-person operation, or get an apprentice, a young person that's wanting to learn this and maybe take over your business or have stake in it or work towards a partnership or something
Mm-hmm.
where they have stake in the game and have a reason for being there. And working with a younger person, they're going to have more respect for you because you're older, you're more experienced. You can teach them about life and money and all kinds of stuff. They're getting more from that job than they would get just working at Amazon or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. But if you want to have a business and you're going to have a need for 4 or 5 or 6 people, then you need to put systems in place where an employee that would basically come from a temp agency, right? That you have no idea. You're just going to hire them and just hope for the best. You have to basically build a system or a shop where somebody could come in off the street and do some sort of job that's productive that you can teach them how to do basically in 2 weeks, and they can start turning a profit for the business, and that you can also replace them. So don't try to build a business based on 4 or 5 or 6 people that are highly skilled and highly trained and that you put 3 or 4 or 8 years into some guy, because eventually, if they're worth anything, they're going to go off and start their own business, right? They're going to have all the tools and techniques and experience that you've paid for and all the mistakes that they've made that you've paid for, and then they're going to go off and run their own business. So employees are very, very tricky.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very difficult to start a business like ours. Now, if you want to have a concrete business like ours and do nice, custom work, you're going to have to throw in stuff that is, sellable, that's less um, that's less work, or you're going to have to just diversify your business and have different products you sell or different services that you sell. Maybe you also do epoxy floors, or you do driveways, or you do curbing, or you have many aspects to your job where you can have employees working and then you can use them when you need them for certain parts of the business. Like I say, it all goes back to what kind of business you want to build for yourself. And I think I talked to so many people that they're just so excited to be in a business that they run and be their own boss, and to see a paycheck or an invoice come in and money come in, but they never thought about what kind of business they want to build. If people just ask themselves, what
Mm-hmm.
kind of business do I want to have in 5 years, like exactly what I want to do, if you just told yourself, ask yourself that question, what kind of business do I want to have in 5 years, you will start doing the things that it takes to get that done, and you'll have a far better business in 5 years than 5 years from now you have the exact same business you have now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's very possible that that idea will change, right? But it's a good idea to at least be working towards something as opposed to leaving it
100%.
towards chance, because chance is
And
not usually going to work out in your favor.
yeah, and when I tell people what kind of business do they want to do, it's everything. It's like, what city do I want to live in?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of time do I want to have with my family? Do I want to work nights and weekends, or do I want to leave at 5 o'clock? Do I want to be an artisan, or do I want to have a business with 15 employees and we're doing 1.6 million a year? Like, you have to decide what kind of business you want, what kind of family life you want,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of money you want to make, and then you have to work backwards from that goal to develop a business that you want to have in 5 years,
Yeah.
which is exactly what I'm doing right now. That's how Seal Hair came along. It was an opportunity. Well, that's the other thing too. A lot of people think people that are successful, they just think they're lucky, but they don't realize that luck is created. Luck isn't something, luck is something you have to be able to take advantage of, right? So if you have an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity that comes up, it looks like it's luck, but it's also because you failed, 150 times. And then finally some circumstance came up and you have the right basket of skills. Like, you're an artisan, you're a business owner, you've got properties, you're an airline pilot. These are my basket of skills, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could do concrete artisanship. And then a situation came up where I needed a sealer. The sealer, um, I just found the right chemist. We got a sealer put together. I got the right licenses and everything, and I launched it in a way where now I have a sealer product. I would have never seen that coming years ago. So just like you said, I had a direction for my business that completely changed.
Mm-hmm.
And for 2 years, I singularly focused on running a sealer company because it took so much time in the beginning. Now I just run my business and we get orders. We hardly ever get phone calls unless I call people just to talk to them because I like to talk to people. But in the beginning, it was a lot of work. So it completely changed its focus. But ultimately, it's building a business that I could either let my kids run one day or it's a business that I could sell one day because it has products, has websites, it has SKUs, it has things that are on the website that could be sold, and it has contracts and orders, and people could look at the orders and they could see it coming in and they could see a workflow in a shop where, okay, you have these employees that do logistics and that's all they do. They box things, put them in boxes, they ship them out. These guys do casting. These guys just work in the mold shop. These guys do installations. You can have guys specialize. You can build a nice business. That's how people with plumbing businesses, tile businesses, electricians, welders, they got a good skill set and then they built. And then along the way, they had an opportunity that came through, and it looks like luck, but opportunity and luck are go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the main arguments for always working on yourself, right? Because like if you're it, it, it can be a little bit of a um what would be a good way of explaining it, where if you say, okay, so like I'm always working on my business, okay, well, if you as the individual aren't getting better, there's only so much progress you can make on your business or any parts of it, right? And that's kind of the argument for uh, going to different classes depending on your industry and like reading. And that's always been the big, because like you just mentioned, like you have to be at a point where you can take advantage of some of those opportunities if they present themselves. Because
Yep.
if you're missing like a key component, uh, like it just, you may not even realize that there's an opportunity there. Um, so do you make time during your week to make sure that like that you allocate towards uh this is gonna sound so lame, becoming like a better person or a better business owner or anything like I set this time
Well,
aside for me.
the way I set my business up, that's exactly how I set my business up. So I try to leave at 5 o'clock every night.
Mhm.
That gets me time to come home, have dinner with my kids, watch a movie, go for a bike ride, go to the pool. I still fly airplanes, but I've been there at my company for 20 years. And so I get my schedule every month, and then I bid in the top 10% out of like 5,500 pilots that work for my company. I'm in like the top 10%. And for my domicile, I'm like number 10 out of almost 300 pilots. I bid number 10. So there's only 9 people in front of me that have more seniority. So I get the very, very best trips, and I can post them and people take those trips. And so it clears up my month. I only fly like maybe three or four. I usually try to fly a couple times a month, but that allows me for the first time, in many years that I worked, if I look back a decade, to be able to take vacations with my kids. So I can go get my trailer and I could take them fishing. I could take them up camping, and we're able to go almost every weekend. We go somewhere. We go out to the amusement park and camp.
Mhm.
We go to the swimming pool. And if I didn't put things in place years ago to work towards that kind of a business that I wanted to run, I'd be an airline pilot right now commuting to Chicago. Because if I wanted to make more money and fly international routes and do Europe and make, three, 400,000 a year, I'd be commuting to JFK or Chicago, sitting in a hotel room, getting my flight out the next day, working for 5 or 6 days, coming home and seeing my kids for 2 or 3 days, and then going back on the road again. That's not a life that I wanted to live.
Mhm.
So when I worked on myself, it because I have kids and a family, I don't think of myself. I don't think some people would disagree, but I don't think that. if I focus on myself, it's going to make me a better, father, better husband, or something like that. I have to get myself available to even have that opportunity to be around my family so that I can be in those situations. So I had to make my work life adjust so that I had time to spend with my family. And that is where you get an opportunity um, to better yourself. You know what I mean? But if you
Hmm.
don't make opportunity for yourself to be in a situation where you can better yourself, you could read books, you could exercise, you could do things all day, and they're not bad. But you're not going to get the end result that you want, which is maybe it's more time with your kids, maybe it's more time with your family, maybe it's more vacations, or just things that you can do and look back at and be like, I'm glad I went, for the past 5 years and took my kids camping and fishing every weekend.
So you're saying have those tools or whatever, but you also need to make sure that you associate time with those as well. Like the you can't
You
you
have
have
to
to
give
have
yourself
both.
opportunity for them. Yeah. And a lot of
Hmm.
people can, you can give yourself you can give yourself platitudes, right? Like you can say, write on your mirror every day, I'm going to be a better person, I'm going to be a smarter person. And that's just a platitude. It doesn't mean anything.
Hmm.
So people think that they can read little quotes and things like that, but I've never been that type of person. This is just what works for me.
Right.
So I actually have to give myself an opportunity to be in a situation where I could do those things. And that is the only way I can work on myself is just give myself time and opportunity to spend, time with my family, spend time in my shop. Same thing with your shop. If you want a nice shop, you want a clean shop, you have to set aside time and opportunity to be in a shop and look at it and figure out how you want to organize it, how you want to run your employees, how you want to build your business for the next 5 years. If you're just in a this hamster ball, this loop where
Hmm.
you're just waking up and you're working and you're finishing at 8 o'clock and you just didn't get enough done today and you have to come in and you're just coming in tomorrow early and you're trying to get this job done, then all you're doing is just kind of working in this cycle. And it doesn't even, and at that point, it doesn't benefit you to make more money. It doesn't benefit you to get more customers, to make more jobs. If you're not living the life you want to live, what's the point?
Yeah, I mean that even goes like we've already mentioned this several times, right? Where you've got to make sure that you've really spend a lot of time and attention on your time frames, right? Because if you now in the beginning you're going to get those time frames wrong pretty much all the time. Just that's just part of the game. Like you've got to learn what those are. But this as soon as you do and you start learning those time frames, you can start building in time for learning about this or cleaning that or being like learning how to be efficient at this, spending time with your family if that's a priority for you. Like there's so many things that hinge on having proper time frames and timelines. It really is quite amazing.
Well, you have to make sure the business that you're running is worth running.
Mm,
If the only way your business works is for you to be in your shop all day, all night, 8, 9 o'clock at night, you're coming home and you're realizing how much time it takes to do a project or how much stress it takes and how much sleep you lose. And, you've got sealer issues and customers calling you back, things that keep you up all night. Is that business worth running? Is it actually worth running that business? And if you look at the money that you make at the end of the year, is it actually worth running it? That's why in the beginning, once I figured this out, and within the first year that I ran my business, that I have to go home at 5 o'clock, it makes me more proficient. But it also lets me look at the business I'm running and make sure it's worth even running. Or
mhm,
do I need to add more aspects to the business? Because you might look back at 5 years of your life or 10 years of your life, and you're like, I really don't even make that much money and I'm away from my family all the time. And my friend just works as a tile setter and he gets off at 5 o'clock and he's making 90,000 a year. Or my friend is, installing solar panels and makes 60,000, has his weekends, he gets 401k. Like you have to look at the cost benefit of what you're
mhm.
doing. And are you in business just for the satisfaction of being your own boss or saying that you're a business owner? Or are you in business to have a life that you want to live and a business that you want to create?
Yeah, and there's no judgment either way, right? Like as long as those are the things
It
that you
it
want.
takes yeah, exactly. But it takes courage to look at your situation and decide if this is something that's worth doing. A lot of people don't have the courage. Like
Oh
there's a
yeah.
fear thing, but then there's a courage thing of saying, have I wasted the past 10 years, doing this? Do I need to do something different? I think a lot of people, they just get so tied up in work that they forget about a lot of these things. And there's some people that just love the art, like they want to suffer for the art.
Mm-hmm.
There's some people that are just romantic about the whole artists and crafts. And
Yeah, like starving
there's
artists and all
people
that
who
stuff.
there's people who do sculpture, there's people who do
Mm-hmm.
painting and stuff like that. Yeah, it's fine. But those are very few, small percent of the population, right? There's people that will work 80 hours a week, and they're they're totally happy with it. They'll go
Oh
to New
yeah.
York and work in a business, and
Mm-hmm.
they'll never see their family. And there's airline pilots that become, international captains on a 777, 747, 767, Airbus 330, and they're gone 6 days, 7 days, 13 days, at a time, and they come back and they're making a ton of money, and they have, three houses. And I mean, but it's a very small percent of people that is a fulfilling life for them to live. So it takes courage to look at your situation, but you can always adapt. Just like I say, you can always look at other things that are concrete related, other things that are artisan related,
Mm-hmm.
um, and decide if there's things that are easier. I've always found doing concrete, there's some projects we do that just make money. And there's some projects we do that were just not even worth it. It was
Yeah.
so much time, so much design work, and so much, back and forth with the customer, that in the end you just didn't even make any money. There's certain things I can do one or two sinks and make the same amount of money as like some of these huge projects that we do.
Mm-hmm.
So I've kind of looked at where, the money comes in, what kind of life I want to live, what kind of systems I want to build in a shop. But a lot of it just goes with just starting. It's like, you talk about personal development. If you want to lose weight or you want to get, better strength or whatever you want to, you just have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing I tell people to do, if you want to start somewhere, clean your shop. Clean your shop, get rid of every single thing that you're not using. If you haven't touched it in 6 months or a year, just get rid of it. Get rid of it. Start with a clean slate, start with a clean shop, because when you go into your shop and it's a place you want to be and it's fun to be there and you can turn some music on and you look around, you have your tools and your employees and everything feels like it's taken care of, you'll start to take care of all those other aspects of your business and you'll start running a business that you want to run.
Mm-hmm. Well, man, I don't know that there's a better place to stop than that, unless there was something else that you wanted
Yeah, it
to
was
hit on.
fun. Yep. I mean, there's so much more stuff to talk to, but we'll have to just get on it in another time.
A big thank you to all you amazing people out there who made it all the way to the end. If you found this episode helpful, a thumbs up, a like, a subscribe, and all that other good social stuff would be incredibly appreciated. If you didn't find it helpful, a comment on our YouTube channel of how I can improve it would be incredibly helpful as well. Or if you just want to complain, I guess you could do that too. If you found any of the resources that we mentioned helpful, we do have everything linked in the show notes. This podcast is not sponsored in any way, so if you use any of those affiliate links, it would be incredibly helpful. Some of them we do receive a commission off of, some of them we don't. Thanks again, everyone, and I look forward to seeing or hearing from you in the very next episode. Thanks again.